Interphase Video Productions presents the 2023 Fairfield County State of the County Address. Brought to you by Buckeye Lake Marina, Fairfield Federal, Fairfield Medical Center, the Frankie Smith Funeral Home, and Personal Touch Party Rentals and Events.
Good morning, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. If I haven't met you, I'm Travis Markwood, President of the Lancaster Fairfield County Chamber of Commerce. We want to welcome you to the 2023 State of the County Address. We really appreciate the big turnout. This is probably in the last 10 years kind of a record attendance for us. We had 320 reservations today, so thank you all for making it out. Wanted to take a moment to thank a few folks here. First and foremost, I want to thank our sponsors who you saw on the screen. We appreciate their support of all of our events, so let's give a big round of those who sponsored today's event. They're also located on your placemat at your table. I want to take a minute also to thank Ani and the County Commissioner's Office and all their employees for all their partnership and help putting today's event together. We really appreciate their assistance. Big thank you first to my staff at the Chamber of Commerce, Margie, Cheryl, Logan. Let's give them a round of applause. They worked really hard on this. And of course to our volunteers that helped us check in, and our friends at the Pickerington Chamber of Commerce as well. We really appreciate their support and partnership today as well. Big thanks to Barbie Widener and the Violet Township and the Wigwam for hosting us. How about a big round of applause? And now I'd like to turn it over to our friend Kim from the Pickerington Chamber.
Thank you, Travis, and thank you, as always, for including the Pickerington Area Chamber of Commerce in this event. We appreciate it. First, I would like to recognize all of our elected officials who are here today, so if you could please stand and let us thank you for your service, including the commissioners. I want to do a quick plug. Our Pickerington Community and Resource Guide is fresh off the presses, and we have a new Pickerington area map there at the registration table if you want to grab yourself one. And now we're going to have the posting of the colors with Pickerington American Legion Post 283. Do we stand? So please stand. Yes.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated. I'd now like to invite Dr. David Uhl, Superintendent of Fairfield County Board of Developmental Disabilities, for our invocation.
Will you join me in prayer? Almighty God, Father of us all, we come to you today and we give you thanks. We give you thanks for your many blessings. We give you thanks that you continue to provide for us. We give you thanks for a great place to live, work, and play like Fairfield County. We realize today, Father, that having a great place to live and work doesn't just happen. It takes planning and thought and work. Thank you for the many elected officials, public officials, and county employees who work to make Fairfield County great. May you continue to lead, guide, and direct them as they go about the work that you have called them to. We thank you today for first responders, Lord. We pray for safety as they run toward emergencies and work to keep us safe. We pray for military personnel around the world who are serving to preserve, protect, and defend our freedom. We thank you for their sacrifice and pray you protect and bless them and their families today. And finally, Father, we are thankful that we can gather together and hear what is happening in our county. May you bless our time together, the food that we have eaten, and the conversation around the room. And I pray this prayer with a grateful heart, for I pray it in Jesus' name. Amen.
So at this time, we'll go ahead and begin the State of the County address. Please continue enjoying your lunches. But at this time, I'd like to introduce Ani Cordell, Fairfield County Administrator, and then following that, Commissioner Davis, Levacy, and Fix. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Ani Cordell, and you know better. Just wanted to officially call this meeting to order and welcome you all on behalf of the commissioners to the 2023 State of the County Address. We're really excited and a little bit anxious. Attendance is up so dramatically that we have caught ourselves wondering if maybe people are either happy or mad. We're not sure. But you're here, and that's great, and we appreciate you being with us today. Please join me in welcoming County Administrator Ani Cordell.
Well, good afternoon. It is awesome to stand up here and look out at all of the familiar faces and some new faces. Thanks for joining us today. I get the privilege of kind of kicking things off and setting the tone, so hopefully I'll get a thumbs up at the end. So some of you might be familiar with the county's tagline: serve, connect, and protect. The two on the ends, the serve and protect, those might seem obvious. You're going to expect that from your county government, right? I think it's the one in the middle, connect, that sets us apart, that makes that difference, and is critical to the success of our county. Without connecting to our community, connecting to our businesses, connecting to our organizations, and connecting to our employees, we're not effective leaders. The roles, responsibilities, and requirements of the Board of County Commissioners, they're set forth by the Ohio Revised Code. The Ohio Revised Code is pretty big. In that, it sets forth that the commissioners are the general administrative body for county government. They're the county's taxing, budgeting, appropriating, and purchasing authority. Doesn't that sound really exciting and interesting? And if you do, Commissioner Davis will tell you more about that. The statutory responsibilities are important, but I believe it's the non-statutory duties that set us apart. The ability to lead, to listen to the needs of the citizens and other elected officials, to compromise and develop a consensus on priority issues to improve the county, I believe, are perhaps some of the most important roles and responsibilities of the commissioners. Connection is the key to making all of this happen effectively. So, I kind of get things going in my head, and I get some images sometimes when I'm preparing some remarks for folks. So the one image I could not get out of my head when I was preparing this was the Connect for game. I was thinking about sharing the importance of connections, and I kept coming back to this. All right, so who's played the game? All right, maybe more as a kid than now, but they've come out with this really fabulous yard-size one, so I think that's leaning more towards adults on that one. But, so the objective of the game, it's pretty simple. Be the first to either form a horizontal, vertical, or diagonal line with all of your chips, right? This image, I think, really conveyed what I was thinking about in terms of connections. You can see the power there. Those 4 yellow chips, they stand out, right? They overpower visually what you see on that game board. There is power in numbers, and connecting increases your numbers. So how does the county go about making connections? What about today's event? Aren't we all making connections today? The county regularly seeks out opportunities to share, engage, and listen. This helps to form the connections and the relationships that are critical to successful public service. Since seeing the Connect 4 image, I've also been thinking in 4s. 4 words came to mind to help describe the actions that can lead to connections, and they're C words: convening, collaborating, cooperating, coordinating. You might say I'm attempting to connect the dots as each of our commissioners share examples of how they have personally implemented, and I affectionately call them the 4 Cs, as well as the initiatives that the county has developed and implemented. 4 Cs aren't found in the Ohio Revised Code. They're not requirements for the commissioners. They are optional, but they see the value and importance of doing more than required. The tremendous outcomes that can be achieved when everyone does more than. This synergy produces an effect that is greater than the sum of individual contributions. Our county is a leader. Leaders identify problems, issues, and opportunities, and then identify solutions. We are prepared and positioned to take on challenges head first while preparing our county for the future. The upcoming video that I'm about to share with you underscores how the county is operating with the 4 Cs in mind: convening, collaborating, cooperating, and coordinating, and doing this with multiple community organizations to make strong and sustainable connections that go beyond the required and make a lasting impact.
As part of the American Rescue Plan Act, Fairfield County received $30.6 million from the federal government. This unprecedented and one-time funding was intended to combat the COVID-19 pandemic, including the public health and economic impacts. The funding made available under the Act provides a unique opportunity for our county to make strategic investments that strengthen our county. In an effort to prioritize areas of focus and need, a strategic planning process was completed by county leadership in 2022 that led to the development of a comprehensive plan that provided a decision-making guide on how to invest resources and realize county goals in alignment with appropriate uses of American Rescue Plan funding. This plan outlined infrastructure, social services, housing, workforce development, economic development, and county operations as the key areas of action. There were a number of goals, priorities, and strategies of the plan that focused on internal needs and provided the county an opportunity to improve technology and access to services, complete water and sewer projects, respond to public health needs, strengthen and support social services, drive and manage equitable growth and development, and train and grow a skilled workforce. It was also a priority to fund impactful community projects.
The ARP funds were critical for us here at the Salvation Army, specifically with the Samaritan Center for Adult Day Services. Our program has been in existence now for 39 years and has been serving those folks in the county who deal with cognitive, developmental, or physical disabilities. We were really running into some struggles keeping this program afloat. The challenge that we ran into is that we had no money coming in. And so there are still expenses that you run into, and so a significant deficit was really starting to run up there. We had to really look and question whether or not we would be able to sustain this program long term. It's because of these funds that we're able to keep operating. All three commissioners, Davis, Levacy, and Fix, are just wonderful friends of ours. We are so thankful for the support and the partnership that they've given to us, the trust that they've given to us with these kind of dollars to be able to use them in a great way to support the county. From the bottom of our hearts for all that it is that they've done for us and what they've done for the people of Fairfield County by investing in organizations like ours.
The Village of Pleasantville is going to be using the American Rescue Plan dollars to rehab our 2 water tanks. Within the Village of Pleasantville, we have about 930 residents according to the 2020 census. We service about 325 homes and businesses within the village on our water system. Our oldest tank was built in the early 1900s and is due for maintenance, painting, and different OSHA upgrades. The newer water tower was built in 1999, and again, it's due for maintenance, different upgrades for OSHA requirements, painting and cleaning and disinfecting. We always appreciate the commissioners' assistance and help. Them and the staff have always been there to support us. This is a good example of how the county is taking in these ARPA funds, using them to ensure that the safety and health of county residents are met, as long as planning for long-term growth.
The funding from the county that was provided to us through ARPA funds was extremely valuable because that funding wasn't there before. So we were dealing with systems and radio communications that were outdated or unsafe, and really the reason was we didn't have the dollars to purchase it. Our radio system was a digital radio system, but it was a closed off system. So it worked great for us, it worked great for the department, but we weren't able to reach out and talk to, say, the Sheriff's Office or Pickerington PD or Logan PD. So the main issue with that is if we had a large scale event, we would be scrambling around to find a communication system to talk to them. The funding we were provided jump-started any timeline that would have been in front of us. So if we would have had to wait a year or 2 years to get that funding and secure it to be on a safer system, this is putting our officers in a better position so much quicker than that.
We were awarded $610,000 of the ARP funding from the county. And with that funding, what it's going to allow us to do is use that as starter grant money on the next 6 to 7 houses that we plan to build here in Fairfield County. What this allowed us to do is pretty much make sure that we're building 2 houses every year for the next 3 to 4. We have partnered with the county on many levels. So we've had not only county administration and workers, JFS, we also partner very closely with the land bank. So the commissioners are on that, and several people in the county are a part of that organization as well, and they're the ones that help pretty much procure the land that we're going to build on here in Fairfield County. So every lot that we've built on so far and that we plan to build on is a lot that we get from the Fairfield County Land Bank.
Our fair has been around here for over 170 years, and the first thing they allowed us to do was enhance what we already have. We were impacted dramatically from an economic standpoint. Our reserves had dipped to lower levels than I had seen in my lifetime. And we were at the place where we were going, we're not sure if we're going to be able to do a fair if we don't figure this out. I was really impressed when we first started talking with the commissioners about the possibility of a grant, because I loved that they had an amazing strategy. So early on, they focused on health care and wellness, and coming out, they said it is critical that we get everybody back engaged in life and earning money again. And I was delighted that they said the fairgrounds is one of those ways that we can both bring people out and enjoying life again and re-kicking the economy. So that was a thrill for us. We would not have been able to showcase this fairground and keep it, the 68 acres that have been here for 170 years that people have enjoyed, they would have continued to deteriorate instead of being an amazing site and venue that people love and cherish.
We recognize that homelessness is really growing in our community, and housing is a big issue. And as the ATOM board, we wanted to help out the population that we could impact, which would be people receiving behavioral health care services. So we began to plan for a supported housing project, and that will house people with serious behavioral health needs, so we can sort of address that most complex end of the spectrum of people that are struggling for housing. So we're thrilled to receive the $3 million in ARPA funding from the county and the county commissioners. We have been able to start a very needed housing project in Fairfield County because of that. Without that funding added to the other funding that we've been able to achieve, we wouldn't have been able to do this because it's a fairly expensive project, and having all of this funding together was really necessary.
We partnered with ATOM when they received the ARPA funding to develop several different projects, including a 24-unit apartment building that will be permanent supportive housing for people that are experiencing homelessness. Also, as part of that project, we will be moving our shelter to the former Center of Hope. And when we move into this new building, not only will we be able to add 7 more shelter beds, but they will all be single beds with privacy walls, which will add to the dignity for all the residents that are staying with us. During the pandemic, I think it highlighted to the community the extent of homelessness in Fairfield County, and I think it's fortunate in that regard that it made it evident to everyone the need for more shelter and more affordable housing, and the need for these people to receive supportive services to hopefully put them into permanent housing. Just a very big thank you for the funding and enabling us to do these projects. I don't see how we could have done it without them.
We are a general aviation airport with over 100 aircraft on the field at any one time. We have had a great success in helping the Central Ohio economy grow. This economic growth has led to a need to study the airport through a master planning process. And in that process, we have had an outcome of an additional 14 new hangars to be built. The Fairfield County Airport is estimated to bring in about $9 million in economic benefit. This benefits all of Fairfield County citizens by increasing the airport's size and operation.
We're fortunate in the Utilities Department to get provided funds, federal funds that the commissioners got, to relocate some water and sewer services here at the airport so they could expand, increase their hangar capacity, ability to provide water and sewer to roughly about 6 hangars, also moving the lift station at this location so they can put some T hangars at that location. All of that infrastructure will be done ahead of what the commissioners plan to expand on the airport. All in all, it's going to make the utilities here at the airport much better, more reliable, and ability to expand even more than what they currently are.
United Way started the Dolly Parton Imagination Library in Fairfield County in 2012. What we do is we send free books home once a month to children from birth to age 5. Our average monthly cost to send books home to over 5,000 children is around $11,000. 50% of that is covered through the Ohio Governor's Office with the Ohio Governor's Imagination Library. The rest of that has to come from our local funds. Thanks to the Fairfield County Commissioners, we sent over 5,100 books home to children throughout Fairfield County. We are so thankful to have the American Rescue Plan money from the Fairfield County Commissioners to support this program. Thanks to this funding, we are able to continue to grow and send additional books home to children throughout the county. Having these books sent to them every month is really helping these children get ready for school and be ready to learn.
With these critical investments, our county is building a strong and prosperous community for the next generation.
As with so many events throughout the county and probably beyond, for all I know, I'd like to specifically thank Interface Video for that production, and certainly for being here with us today and covering our event today. We appreciate you all very much. Thank you. So it's not my subject matter today, but I did want to mention, some folks may recall last year I talked a little bit about transit in the community and what some of the problems were with that I was researching and observing. And I just wanted to come back to that for a minute. As it turns out, I ended up having conversations with 400 conversations with people who had transit impediments, in some cases acute, in other cases chronic. And in last year's remarks, I mentioned to you that the county was contributing about $25,000 a year to that operation. I told you I thought we could do better, and we are. We increased that to $175,000, which results in a dollar-for-dollar federal match. So the funding for that service has gone up dramatically. I also mentioned that I would go to others and ask that they contribute more. That process also went well. So funding is up significantly for local transit. In addition to that kind of street level analysis that I was doing, as we said we would last year, we did end up getting a consultant hired, RLS and Associates, to kind of look at transit from a 30,000 foot view and say, okay, what are we doing here? What are the problems? What are those potential solutions? And that process is nearly complete. Complete enough that on August 14th, Lancaster City Council introduced a resolution of intent to transfer the Lancaster Fairfield Transit Department, it's a City of Lancaster department, to transfer that entire department to county operations. And so that's our intent, that's our goal. We're hoping to have that transfer complete by July 1st. If you're looking for an explanation, a reason, why are you doing this? How does this make sense? Probably the simplest, it's very complicated, but probably the simplest explanation is that you have a City of Lancaster department trying to provide a service on a county-wide basis, and that provides a fair amount of complexity for them to do that. Our ability to do that is probably a little better, and we are very cooperatively, as far as I can tell, unanimously among elected officials at the county and the city level, going to work together to effectuate that very complicated transfer July 1st. So I just wanted to mention that because I'm always nervous when we talk about things and we identify problems. Well, if you don't come back and close the loop and let people know that you aren't just talking about things, you're actually moving on them and trying to make improvements, then I think that kind of closes the loop on that. So, Bob, if you get that first slide up. When my wife saw this slide, she did like a vomit thing where she thought it would be horrible and I shouldn't do it. But what this represents, and if you're interested in math and numbers and things like that, take a picture of it. I won't be on this slide terribly long. But what it is it's a 12-year history of the revenue, the expense, the cash balance, what we call red line, and cash over red line. And I wanted to share that with you because the primary responsibility of us being county commissioners is to be the funding authority for county operations. We're responsible for making sure there is sufficient revenue to handle the demands and the needs of providing county services. That is job number one, and number two is a distant second. And so I wanted to just share this data with you. This is all actual, closed out in 22, this chart. And what you see there is we went from a cash balance, a cash position of $8.7 million in 2011. And in 2022, that has now grown to a cash balance of $34.4 million. That's an extraordinary improvement in the cash position of the county over that 12-year period, all the while having the lowest sales tax rate in Central Ohio. That is the primary funding mechanism for general fund operations. These are general fund numbers. We have the lowest sales tax rate in Central Ohio. If we increase that rate by 1/4 point, it would generate about $7 million a year, and we would still have the lowest sales tax rate in Central Ohio. So in terms of that being our primary responsibility to provide for the funding to handle operations, we're doing so, and we're doing so more efficiently. and competently than any other county in the state of Ohio, and I'm showing you the proof of that. Now, a couple little things on there. You probably know what cash balance means, and then red line. What does red line mean? That's basically just 2 months of operations. Red line could probably be called yellow line, actually, in this sense. If we did hit a cash position at red line, we're not in trouble. Liquidity for county operations is probably about a 5 to 10% cash situation. That's about what we need to handle operations. That red line is defined at 16.6%. That's certainly consistent with what our rating agencies would like to see. And then that final line, cash over red line, which is certainly an important part of what we look at. As you look from 2011, we were $3.3 million cash over red line, and then in 2022, $25.4 million cash over red line. When you look at those years, say 2011 to 2016, the county commissioners were looking backward for many of those years. We were looking back at decades of problems and decisions that hadn't been solved and probably could have or should have been solved. And so we spent a fair amount of time in those years, 11 to 16, just kind of going to the closet and getting the skeletons out and saying, okay, what hadn't been decided around here and what needs to be done, and getting stuff done. And I give you some examples of that. And then it's just been in the recent years that we've been able to kind of lift our chin up and say, okay, we've kind of cleaned out the backlog, if you will, and now we're able to look forward a little bit. And so over this period of time, where, as you can see, the cash position of the county has improved so dramatically, we've also been able to accomplish a number of things, and to do so under kind of the auspices of an analysis about out-year impacts. All this historical data is fed into what we call the 5-year out, a very complex planning tool that projects revenue and expense for 5 years out. CapEx is on a different schedule, of course, a longer-term schedule. But when we do those 5-year outs, we do those in an incredibly detailed and complex way. Of course, our primary tool is to look back at the history of revenue and expense as a guide to what it will be in the future. But we look at a tremendous number of tools to try to make that a good and accurate planning document. We'll look at the Federal Reserve's dot plot, for example. We'll look at yield curves, interest rates, unemployment rates, the Atlanta GDP tracker. I mean, a tremendous amount of data is brought together to try to make those 5-year outs as accurate as possible so that we can have the kind of wonderful financial position that I'm able to share with you here today. During these years, we built a jail. And again, I know people don't like numbers, and that's fine, but if you look in that 2013 to 2015 range, our cash position went down a little bit because we did spend some cash getting the new jail up and operating. Interestingly, and again, I only have a few minutes, but if you look in the deep out years of the jail project, it's actually net positive on the gap up between revenue and expense. In other words, the jail improves our future financial position for a lot of reasons, one of which we were spending about $1 million a year in out-of-county prisoner housing, and now a few counties are actually paying us to house their inmates, so that's a reversal on that line item. And so, again, down the road in the out years, that'll be an improvement. We've done the emergency management operations center on Baldwin Avenue. Again, that's a gap up between revenue and expense in the out years because we were paying some rent for some things before that building was rehabilitated. If you look at the record center, for example, on Chestnut where we're storing records, again, it's a gap up revenue over expense in the out years because we were paying a tremendous amount in rent to a facility that was housing our records in a kind of a damp, not temperature controlled environment. And we were paying rent for it, and now we're not paying that rent. So again, when we look at those 5-year outs and we try to do a good job of managing the county's finances, a lot of the decisions we make, which may not be apparent on the surface, are designed to create increased gap between revenue expense in the out years. Whenever we're done, and I don't know when that'll be, when we're not commissioners anymore, somebody's going to get the keys to a Maserati. They can wreck it, they can screw it up, they can do whatever they want with it, but we are looking forward, looking ahead. It's kind of the opposite of what you see a lot of politicians do. As little as they can take from people and as much as they can give them on the spot, in the moment, that's how they get reelected, and that's what they do. That's why the federal government spends trillions of more dollars than what they have. We're not doing that. I can give you some more examples. Thank you. I can give you some more examples. We built a new SWAT building for the sheriff's office to house and operate out of for SWAT operations. Again, spent some cash, $1.8 million, but we were paying rent, again, for an old, crappy building. I don't even think it had a toilet, and it certainly wasn't a nice facility for our folks to work in. So brand new building, alleviation of rent, wonderful, wonderful thing there. You saw in the video there, we're putting in some new hangars out at the airport. There is a wait list of people, deposits already paid, who want those things, and that will generate revenue in the out years. So again, looking into the out years and financial planning, that's a project that will result in revenue as opposed to expense. So it again gaps up between revenue over expense. Another project is to mention, some folks may have seen, there's a new solar array that we put in out at the one-stop shop. Again, spent some money, but in the out years that reduces costs in terms of our electric costs for operating that building. That's a pilot project. Whether the ROI on that will pan out, whether that needs to be taken more broadly across other county facilities that are not historic, we'll wait and see. But if you do the math on that, again, it's spending some money now and improving the gap up between revenue and expense in the out years. So when we look at this number here, this $34.4 million, which is going to go up again in 2023, probably by about $2.5 to $3 million improvement in that situation, we're getting too high. And so we need to do more in terms of evaluating projects where we can bring that number down a little bit, but not cause harm in the 5-year outs. So that's what we're analyzing, that's what we're working on. Now, and look, I got the boring part this year, I get it. But I want to show you another chart. I want to show you something, and it might help you visualize with me why it matters for the county government to be operated on such a fiscally sound basis. This chart is from the United States Bureau of Labor Statistics, and it is a chart demonstrating local government employment and state government employment. And you'll see there's a cliff in that chart in the first quarter of 2020 in terms of local government employment in the country. And you'll see that local government went over a cliff. Fairfield County did not go over that cliff. In the last payroll of 2019, Fairfield County had 853 employees. In December of 2020, we had 856. We saw no reduction. Our employment remained stable, and therefore our services remained stable. And the significance of this chart is when you see that cliff that many local governments went over on average, that's a reduction in service. When you take people off the payroll, they're not doing something for people that they were doing before. And what I'm struck by is at that moment in time, in that first quarter in 2020, it's when people needed us most. If you were already below water in terms of your own personal situation, you were already in need of county services. If your head was just barely above water, you went under right at that moment. And you needed county government to be there for you. So we were nervous, we were anxious. Sales tax went down by 40%, casino revenues went away, investment revenues were in the tank, and we were a little bit nervous. But we had a significant cash position, an ability to say, wait a minute, we're not cutting people. We are at a moment in time when people need us most, and we were fiscally prepared to manage that situation, and no reduction in service whatsoever. So managing the county finances as we have for many years now in an appropriate way enables us to be prepared for anything. There were three things that happened right there in that moment. One, fiscally, we were prepared. We could handle it. We didn't need to freak out because revenue wasn't coming in anymore. We had the cash to continue operations. The second thing that was important, and I think resulted in some of that drop-off, is many local governments didn't have a continuation of operation plan, which included a global pandemic. We actually had a plan for that. Now, at the time, Dr. Carrie Brown, I know she spent many nights, all night long, preparing specific memos of pandemic protocol so that our folks would know how to operate in that environment. But that was another critical point. We had the funding to be able to do it, we had the policy, we implemented the policy, and we continued providing services under the worst of circumstances, probably the worst episode in the history of local governments in this country since World War II. And we just kept right on going because we were prepared. And we think we're prepared for any event that we can imagine. I mean, literally, I think you have to go to like an extinction level event or something that we wouldn't be prepared for because we've managed the finances so well. The third factor that was critical there is just an understanding of what the situation was out there and what people were going through and the needs that they had, and we wanted to be there to try to provide those needs. So we feel good. We feel prepared. We recognize that our cash position is probably a little stronger than it should be, and we'll bring that down a little bit, but we'll do that with projects that either reduce expense in the out years or improve revenue in the out years. In any event, what we will not do is intentionally enact policies that will cause those lines to cross over in the out years to where we're using cash and then we're either laying people off or raising taxes. We're managing the county's finances in the most sophisticated way that we can imagine. If we see a different and more sophisticated way to do that, then we'll adopt that one. But in the meantime, the state of the county, my God, it's strong. And we appreciate y'all being with us here today.
Where can I find advanced heart care?
When you choose Fairfield Medical Center for your heart care, you'll find confidence in our expertise and peace of mind in our compassion. Your health is important, and our heart and vascular experts specialize in the latest technology and treatments to keep you feeling your best. Whatever you're searching for, you can find it at Fairfield Medical Center.
Fairfield Federal. When it comes to our customers and our community, we go above and beyond to help. Our people make the difference. Personal or business banking, whatever you need, we take it seriously because we know you do. Stop by today at any of our 3 locations and see why the difference is clear. Fairfield Federal Savings and Loan specializes in banking that revolves around you.
Member FDIC Equal Housing Lender.
The Frankie Smith Funeral Home and Crematory in Lancaster and the Johnson Smith Funeral Home in Baltimore have a long and wonderful history of serving our community. Feel free to give us a call at 740-653-0652. Stop in and see us at either of our 2 locations, 405 North Columbus Street in Lancaster and 207 South Main Street in Baltimore. Respect for tradition, regard for change.
Hi, I'm Carol Whittington, and I would like to invite you to stop by Personal Touch Party Rentals and Events, located at 1540 Hubbard Drive in Lancaster. We are a small family-owned business and have been servicing the Central Ohio and Hocking Hills area since 2003. Graduations with a personal touch, weddings with a personal touch, corporate events with a personal touch. Please call us today for all your party rental needs, 740-689-6991.
God, how I love financial figures. So, this would be my 11th State of the County address. And over those years, we've addressed various topics and so on and so forth. But this year, I'd like to talk a little bit. I actually have 2 subjects. One is about our employees at Fairfield County, and starting with the commissioners. Now, I'm not going to talk about myself, obviously, but Commissioner Davis and Commissioner Fix, and I always sit between the two because, you know, if you don't, they're always wanting to fight one another. That's not true, but you know, we do have differences of opinion, but at the end of the day, we all work together. And if you talk to any of the elected officials here in Fairfield County, you'll find out that many of the counties, that is not the case. Matter of fact, it's just the opposite. And so consequently, if we're not working together, we're not helping the county. So I want to recognize Commissioner Davis and Commissioner Fix for their very good work. Thank you. Now, moving on with my slideshow, if you will. I also want to mention Ani Cordell, who you've heard from earlier, as well as Jeff Porter. Ani is our county administrator, and Jeff is our deputy as well. So if Ani's not available, then Jeff picks up. And he also has a lot of other duties, which I'll talk about a little later. Also, Rochelle Menninger, she's our clerk, and Bennett Nice-Wonger, I hope that's correct. He's got a kind of a little difficult name. And then we'll talk a little bit about Stacy Nisley in our commissioner's office. She's great with the numbers, putting the numbers together. Bart Hampson, I lovingly refer to him as a bean counter. And so we've had that discussion back and forth, where did that come from, but it's pretty interesting. I think it goes back to the farming days where they actually counted the beans as they put them in the bag or something of that nature. And Christina Foster and Emily Gussingler. So all those folks make up our commissioner's office, and then also Lori Hawk and Abby Watson and Amberly Hammond and Ashley Lynch. All just great people that continually work to serve and make Fairfield County a much better place. Then we got John Coaches. John actually oversees our airport. He's on the board of the airport, as well as he's our EMA director, and he's also our facilities manager. So he's got a full plate to deal with. He's not with us today, but he just a great employee. And then Leanna Adams, she oversees our dog shelter. You know, years ago we used to have all kinds of complaints about our dog shelter, but we don't hear anything today. And that means they're doing a good job overseeing the dog shelter. So, by the way, there's a few dogs that are up for adoption, so take a look if you're interested. I think, Commissioner Fix, you have 3, is that correct? A 4th would be just perfect. That way it would be an even number. And then Dan Neely, he oversees our IT. And even when we have issues, and generally when we have issues with IT, it generally comes from the outside, so Dan is able to navigate that. And then Rick Zabrak, and I'll be talking a little bit later about our workforce center, but Rick is our economic development director as well as the director at the workforce center. But Rick is just a tremendous individual. I mean, some of the things we've been able to accomplish here in Fairfield County, it's you don't see it any place else in the state, and so we've been recognized for their good work. And then I'll mention Jeff Porter one more time, because he actually wears a couple other hats as human resources, oversees our insurance program, and he's been very good at keeping the cost down. I think when negotiation time comes each and every year, as far as what the insurance carriers are going to charge, he doesn't accept their first offer, nor their second or third or fourth, and so he's very good at that. And then also he oversees the dog shelter as well. So Corey Clark, he's our JFS director. Corey, thank you for all your work. You know, some of the work in protective services and other fields are very, very difficult, and those folks just do a tremendously good job. And then Tony Vogel, he oversees our utilities for Fairfield County. And as Fairfield County grows, he's actually been able to stay ahead of the game as far as what's going to be needed in the future as far as well fields and that sort of thing. And so he's thinking way ahead to prepare Fairfield County. Then we have Dr. Carrie Brown, who's elected to the auditor's position. Dr. Brown's been with us 35 years, is that correct? 35 years, and she's probably the most overqualified auditor in the state of Ohio. Matter of fact, many people reach out to her on a regular basis for assistance. So thank you, Doctor. And Brandon Meyer, he's our clerk of courts. Brandon, he has his new facility here in Pickerington, Violet Township, and just does a great job. And then Judge Behrens, I saw Judge Behrens earlier, you know, wonderful judge, very fair, as well as Judge Trimmer in Common Pleas. And then Dr. Varney, he's our coroner. You know, probably not one of the best jobs to have, but much needed. And then Jeremiah Upp, our county engineer. And Jeremiah, you know, especially in the wintertime when we're all in bed and we're thinking about, you know, how terrible the weather is out, he's out there with his crew overseeing plowing snow and so on and so forth. And Kyle Witt, we heard from him earlier today. Kyle, our county prosecutor. And you know what's important, and we hear this nationwide, what's happening in many cases. Criminals aren't being prosecuted. Well, here in Fairfield County, they prosecute criminals. And he does a tremendously good job. And Lisa McKenzie, she's a recorder. Lisa does a great job and also very forward-thinking in what she does. And Judge Laura Smith, domestic relations. Thankfully, I've never had to appear before her. But and then Judge Terry Vandervoort, domestic relations and probate judge. Just wonderful judges. And then, of course, our sheriff, Alex Lape. And, you know, when Alex took over from Dave Phelan as sheriff, he had awfully big shoes to fill. But, boy, I tell you what, he's done a great job. He's come up with some new ideas. And at the end of the day, the sheriff's office is very, very, very well run. And then, of course, Jim Bonson. You know, Jim, it's always exciting to me every year when I get a letter from Jim with his name on the outside of the envelope. You know, twice a year I'd say, oh, Jim wrote me a letter. Well, and open it up, and there it is. And then, you know, I also want to acknowledge Violet Township. You know, this is their facility, and if you don't know the history of it, this was owned by the Wolf folks, the Wolf Foundation, and it came very close to being bulldozed. This is prime real estate, and the possibilities were there if it hadn't been for the trustees, Trustee Dunlap, as well as Darren Monholland, stepping up and actually being able to buy it, and they bought it at a pretty reasonable price, and so consequently we're here at this facility today just because of their forward thinking. And of course also have to recognize Lori Sanders, another great trustee. I also want to recognize the three mayors. Mayor Ebert from Canal Winchester, I think the mayor's here, Mayor. And then Lee Gray, Lee as well, does a terrific job of being the mayor of Pickerington. And then, of course, we have David Scheffler. David, would you mind standing, please? So David will be retiring at the end of this term. And, you know, he's done just a tremendously good service to the folks in Lancaster, as well as Paul Martin, Safety Director. He's here. Paul, thank you. Thank you. So moving into the next slide, and this is probably going to be a little strange. I don't know, does anybody recognize this? This is, in 1955, I was pretty young. I was about 10 years old, and got the music, deal with it. But I wanted a Dick Tracy two-way communicator more than anything in the world. I mean, I believed you could talk to Dick Tracy if I had one of those. You know, and so that, you know, that technology wasn't even possible, wasn't even close to being possible at that time. But now it is. I got my two-way communicator. So, you know, I guess the reason for that is because we're coming into a new era, and this area is called AI. Now, everybody's heard of AI, and some people maybe even used it. How many people here have used Chat GPT? Unbelievable. Matter of fact, I think it gets inside of your brain and knows what you're thinking. But in reality, artificial intelligence leverages computers and machines to mimic the problem-solving and decision-making capabilities of mankind. Now, when we say that, how many jobs are going to be lost because of that? So when we think in those terms, we also have to think in terms of planning for that future, because with jobs being lost, there will also be opportunities. You know, for instance, meet the autonomous mega mower robot putting an end to grass cutting as we know it. The Firefly Automatic will now mow 19 NFL football fields on a single charge. Can you imagine that? And as it mows, it actually learns about the field and how it can do better the next time. So as we get into this kind of transition into AI and how it can affect the future, we also need to think of how it's going to affect workforce. And one of the things we do at our Fairfield County Workforce Center is we have a lot of skilled jobs that won't be affected by AI. And in some of those jobs, most tasks will still be performed by humans, whether craft workers like plumbers, electricians, HVACs, carpenters, and so on and so forth. So many of these jobs that we're teaching at our workforce center won't be affected. Matter of fact, if anything, they'll be enhanced, because some of this AI and the future of that, you can't replace it. In 2023, Fairfield County received an Achievement Award from the National Association of Counties, NACO, in the category of Children and Youth. Summer career exploration camps. The camps are offered free of charge at Fairfield County Workforce Center to middle-class students to introduce youth to careers in engineering, healthcare, and construction. Fairfield County was one of only 6 counties in Ohio to win the NACO Achievement Award this year. It's the 3rd award the county has won in the past 4 years at our Workforce Center. So our Workforce Center is something we put a lot of effort, we put a lot of finances in with the help of Hocking College and High University, and their collaboration, again, all working together and polling in the same direction. So this year, the state of Ohio awarded our workforce center in Fairfield County $4.5 million. And that $4.5 million, a portion of it will go towards some improvements at the workforce center. Another portion will go to High University to enhance some of the programs that are being offered. And the last portion will be offered to Hocking College. And all these programs are, again, to enhance what we're trying to accomplish at the Workforce Center. Because what happens is when a young person, say a high school, senior, for instance, all of a sudden they say to themselves, oh, I wonder what I'm going to be able to do because I can't go to college because I don't have a good enough GPA or whatever, or my SAT score wasn't good enough, or I just can't afford to do that. And then we take them there and expose them to some of the possibilities that are available to them, especially in some of these skilled jobs, like electrical, like HVAC, and so on and so forth. And all of a sudden, they have a big interest in, hey, I can do this. I would enjoy doing this. And not only that, you can be well paid for doing that. So at the end of the day, our workforce center, and especially with the leadership of Rick Zabrak, doing a tremendously good job. And of course, I again have to include the collaboration of Ohio University as well as Hocking College. And so thank you for all that. Thank you. So I'd like to now introduce Commissioner Jeff Fix to do the final closing. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Levesey. I think next year we might want to go back to the videos and do lots of outtakes because those seem to be a lot of fun for everybody. Thank you all for taking the time to join us today to hear about the state of our county. As you've seen, we're in a great place in Fairfield County in many ways. We are in a strong financial position, as Commissioner Davis talked about. We've taken a leadership role in the state of Ohio, and we're making significant positive impacts in our community, as you've just seen. And really, that's a tribute to all of our county employees, from the elected office holders all the way down to our most recent additions. The work that we all collectively do makes a difference every day. We've talked about that in recent events like this, and rather than being redundant and sounding like we're patting each other on the back, I wanted to talk about a couple of other things today. First, I'd like to circle back briefly on the topic of my presentation at last year's State of the County, defeating generational poverty. I've learned an awful lot about poverty over the past year, and I continue to learn more each day. And though you've not heard us talk about that topic specifically, you have heard us, all three of us, talk about certain things that we need to do to help people help lift themselves up. Commissioner Levesey has done an amazing job working with Ani Cordell and Rick Zabrak and his team to make our workforce development efforts and the building that those efforts emanate from the best in the state. The fact that the governor asked us to ask for money in the state budget and that both the House and Senate approved our significant $4.5 million ask is proof that we're leading the state in this effort and we're beginning to see significant results. So we have more jobs in Fairfield County than we have people to fill them. And now we have training programs that allow people to move into skilled trade careers that are able to sustain a family. And you've heard Commissioner Davis talk about transportation and all the things we're doing to make it easier for people to get to and from those great jobs that are being created. That work continues, but we're making significant strides in finding ways to help all those who are unable to get where they need to go, a way to get there. And many of you have heard me talk about the work we're doing to bring much needed workforce housing to Fairfield County. I've talked about that all over the county, and there's a super long video that I did earlier this year if you want to find it on our website. So I'm not going to take up too much time today on that topic. So we're addressing the creation of jobs and the training that goes with it. We're addressing transportation and housing needs, and that's the first big step in helping people deal with poverty. But we know that there's much more to it than that. We have to figure out the daycare situation and healthcare and the benefits cliff and literacy, and something that I was not aware of, but I've learned a lot about, the culture of poverty that works to keep people in that cycle rather than encouraging their escape from it. We have a long way to go, but we're determined to continue the strong work that's been done thus far by our entire county team to make change happen. Now, for the second topic, those of you who know me know that I'm sometimes a guy who will say things that other people are thinking, but they have too much decorum to actually say those things out loud. That's where I'm going next. The second thing I wanted to talk today is to talk about how we talk to each other. And really, it's not for most of the people in this room. There are so many folks in this room that are elected officials, county employees or other government employees, or folks who work with us. This is more addressed for those people who will watch this online once it's posted, but it's about how we talk to each other. When I was a kid growing up in Wisconsin, my mother's parents would host on a pretty regular basis these family get-togethers. We're Irish, so my grandmother called her family the Griffin clan, and she loved having her two brothers and all their kids and my mom and her sister and all the rest of us over for any holiday, birthday, you name it. If she could come up with a reason to throw a party, by God, we were all going to get together and have a great time. And the pattern for these gatherings was always the same. My parents and my aunt and uncle and us kids would get there a bit early to help set up. Then my mom's aunts and uncles and cousins would arrive with baskets of food or gifts or both, and we'd all have a big meal together, scattered around the house. And then the adults would gather in the living room. My Uncle Jim would light his pipe, Uncle Bud would pour a beer, and everyone would settle into their traditional seats around the room, and a great discussion would ensue. The conversation always started with the Green Bay Packers or the Milwaukee Brewers, depending on the time of year, and would eventually turn to politics. Uncle Bud and Uncle Jim were staunch Republicans, while my grandfather was a Boston Democrat. Needless to say, they didn't always agree. But they would go back and forth, sometimes for what seemed like hours, and never get personal, never be disrespectful, never get mean. They often agreed to disagree and moved on. Keep in mind that this is during the time of Nixon and Watergate and Gerald Ford and Jimmy Carter, so there was plenty to talk about. And when the conversation wore out, everyone would pack up their baskets with leftovers and gifts and find their coats and head out, hugging and kissing all along the way. And then a few weeks later, we'd all get together again and do it all over. The point of all that is that this is how I learned to debate politics. It's not done with vitriol or personal attacks or anger. Rather, it's a healthy discussion where there's an effort to understand the other person's perspective, to actually hear them and what they're thinking and feeling, and then to address their points with points of your own, attacking the idea, not the person. Because at the end of the day, we all have to live with each other. And I bring all of this up because I don't feel like this is how we deal with each other anymore. At the federal level, I'm disgusted with the way Republicans and Democrats attack each other personally, often very personally, rather than having a healthy, robust discussion about any topic. And I'm disappointed that lately some of this has crept into our local situation, whether on social media or in emails to one of us or even in our meetings. There's a tension and a tone that are not productive and are, in my estimation, completely unnecessary. There are people in our county who have absolutely legitimate concerns about solar farms or land use plans or other topics of the day, and there's a way for us to have a healthy, robust discussion on these topics and many others. Unfortunately, not everyone approaches a conversation with the commissioners in this way. Rather, some take time to talk about things that the commissioners have nothing to do with, like the Chinese army, or, to this very day, the COVID conspiracy and cover-up. Now, people can come and talk to the commissioners about anything, but honestly, dealing with the Chinese military or the federal government's response to the COVID epidemic is just a little bit above our pay grade. we don't and can't impact those things. So taking time in public meetings to talk about them and to be arrogant and condescending while doing so, that's just really not helpful. Others who do want to talk about topics that the commissioners are involved with take an approach that is not about having a productive conversation. Rather, it seems they're interested in making a show of themselves in front of an audience. I can tell you that accusing the commissioners of intentionally misleading the public is not a great start. Accusing us of having some hidden agenda doesn't usually work. Acting like you are the moral authority on any given topic seems a bit pretentious. And the one that really burns me is the questioning of what our motivations really are. I can tell you this. I've held elected office for 18 years now. Commissioners in Davis and Levacy, because they're way older than I am, for many more years than that. I've never worked with a group that is more committed to doing the right thing for the right reasons, regardless of the political consequences, than the three of us are. During my time as a Pickerington City Councilman, chairman of the Republican Party, and now as a commissioner, we've weathered some significant storms, and my colleagues have faced significant challenges as commissioners before I joined them. We've all done this in our own ways, but with a common theme. Always do what you believe to be the right thing for the right reasons, and the rest will take care of itself. So what I'm suggesting is, rather than having the keyboard courage to accuse us of some untoward motivation or activity, or standing in front of us when you know there is not a time for discussion or debate, rather than doing those things to make yourself feel good and score some points with your friends, have the actual courage to have a real conversation. Let me give you a couple recent examples of people who have taken a different approach, one that I've really, really appreciated. Evan Martin is a young farmer and a fireman in Walnut Township. He also works here in the Violet Township Fire Department in the city of Pickerington. He's a busy dude. He came to a couple of our meetings just to listen, and then he called me up and asked to meet. We had a beer at a place here in Pickerington and talked for an hour and a half about his concerns. I heard him, and after our meeting, I feel like he had a deeper understanding of the commissioner's point of view as well. Josh Berry also came to a couple of our meetings and spoke at one of them. He too is a farmer in Walnut Township, and after one of our commission meetings, he invited me out to his farm. A couple of weekends later, I went out there on a Saturday morning and spent 2 hours with him. We toured his farm and then drove around and looked at where the proposed solar farm would be and how he felt it would impact his property. Later, his dad and uncle joined the conversation, and as I was leaving, I got the feeling that those three felt like they had been heard, and they too had a better understanding of my perspective on the situation. Paul and Selena McCord sent an email that wasn't the typical, "We don't want solar because it'll ruin our view, destroy farmland, displace wildlife, and foul the water." Instead, Mr. and Mrs. McCord sent a 7-page email loaded with facts and 23 citations that they used to back up what they had to say. Links to websites, articles from experts. Now, this is a useful email. It wasn't about the emotions they felt. It was a factual presentation of the perceptions they had about how solar farms would affect them. And finally, Beth Cottrell, who is leading one of the anti-solar groups, when she comes to talk to us, she's not dramatic and doesn't threaten us with, "Do what we want or we'll remember what you do when we go to vote." Rather, Mrs. Cottrell is respectful and courteous and has, on several occasions, invited us to sit on her front porch. And I'm taking her up on it. I've reached out to her to set up a time to do that. I'm going to sit on her front porch to hear her and her neighbors and talk about their situation and the situation we as county commissioners find ourselves in. Those, to me, are examples of a discourse, a conversation, a way of addressing each other that leads to deeper understandings of each other's perspectives. I get a much deeper understanding of the legitimate concerns and can offer my perspective on where all of this is going. And at the end of the conversation, we both understand that this is a complex and difficult issue, that we're both in a tough spot, and there's a commitment to furthering the conversation as time goes on. And that, to me, is the essence of public service. There's an issue in which different people have differing opinions, and we actually spend time discussing those opinions and concerns and find some mutual ground. And we agree to work together to continue the conversation in the hopes that when all is said and done, we've all handled the issue and each other with respect and dignity. We won't always agree. That's not going to happen, but we can disagree without being disagreeable. We can have differing opinions and still respect each other, and we can work together for the common good of all of our county residents. This is the job that you elected the three of us to do, and I'm incredibly proud of the way all three of us do it. You want to talk? Come find me. My number is all over the place, and I'm not hard to track down. I'll come talk to you, and more importantly, I'll hear you. And I hope you'll hear me. And when we do that, maybe there will be just a bit more mutual respect and grace that we can give each other. And wouldn't that be a great example for us to show our kids and our grandkids? So thank you for hearing me out on this topic. It's been on my mind for some time, and I just feel like it was time to say something. We serve all of you and every resident and business owner in Fairfield County. We want to hear you. We want to understand your concerns. We want to treat you with respect and feel respected in return. I look forward to many meaningful conversations in the weeks and months and years ahead. Thank you all very much. And now, without further ado, I will make a motion to adjourn the meeting. Is there a second?
I got a motion and a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. This meeting is adjourned. And on behalf of the Fairfield County Board of Commissioners, we thank you for the record crowd today and appreciate you being here.
Interface Video Productions presents the 2023 Fairfield County State of the County Address. Brought to you by Buckeye Lake Marina, Fairfield Federal, Fairfield Medical Center, the Frankie Smith Funeral Home, and Personal Touch Party Rentals and Events.